A close relative of mine has often told me about how difficult his life has been. He explains how in the past his family was poor, his childhood was difficult, and how there is no one to stand by him and help him with his higher education. And now he says it's impossible for him to get by because he is uneducated and unemployed. He always complains that if there had been someone standing behind him, everything would have been different. Another relative of mine has also told me about how he used to be poor, struggled a lot, and had no one to support him. As he got older, he also studied often, but at the time, he had no one to finance his education. As a result, he was unable to get into a college or university. However, my relative insists that it is because of the struggles in his life, the fact that he grew up with no one to support him, that led him to learn to trust in and to develop himself. He worked hard night and day, and now he has reached a point in his life where he has quite a lot of money, many opportunities, and a good life. If you think about it, both of my relatives have the same reasons for their present situation. People like my first relative are reactive people. They are not always able to have self-control and manage themselves, and they tend to focus on and blame things that they are not able to change. People like my second relative are proactive people. They always tend to focus on things they can control and change, ignore those things that they can't, and only pay attention to things they can do themselves. In reality, asking the question, what can I do to change this situation, is quite a difficult thing for someone to do. Because finding the answer to that question will require pain, effort, and sleepless nights. Since the brain always focuses on the easiest and most effortless path, and since most people are afraid of putting forth effort in the first place, they don't realize that they need to work on changing themselves, and instead, they just blame their environment. Thus, the first habit of highly effective people is to be proactive and only focus on what they can do themselves. The author suggests that you should try something. Imagine that you are mourning. But this time, rather than mourning for someone else, you are mourning yourself. People are crying and you are standing in front of your own coffin and looking at your corpse. What would you say to yourself? This question is the most important question that you need to ask yourself. Would you ask yourself, was I a good spouse? If so, then why do most of us come home every day and speak to our spouse in anger and frustration? Does that line up with the picture we want to see of ourselves? Would you ask yourself, have I been a constructive and beneficial member of society? Have I added value to the lives of others? If so, are you currently doing things that would allow you to say this about yourself later? Or are you so afraid of being defeated and failing that you just go on living an average life like so many of us? Would you ask yourself, have I become someone who is educated, knowledgeable, and talented? If so, how much of your time every day do you devote to gaining new and important knowledge, reading books, and developing your thoughts and opinions? If we will just ask ourselves, when I die, how do I want to be remembered? We will change the very foundation of how we live. Thus, the second habit of highly effective people is, when you begin to do anything, begin with the end in mind. If I were to ask you right now, what are the most important things in your life, you would probably say my health, my relationships, or my family, just like most people. No one says things like watching TV, spending hours on Facebook, reading statuses, writing comments, seeing who liked what. Let's think about this. How many of us spend more time watching TV, being on Facebook, reading statuses than we do exercising or creating a healthy family environment? Try to spend more time on the important things in life. If you see that something is not lining up with your goals and desires, then don't waste time on it. They say that time is money, but time is much more important than money, because if you lose money, you can always earn it back again, but after losing time, you'll never be able to gain it back again. Thus, the third habit of highly effective people is put first things first. Imagine that you own a restaurant and that I also own a restaurant. Let's say that you have a consistent customer base of 5,000 people and I also have a customer base of 5,000 people. Now say that we come to an agreement. You will pass out my restaurant's business card to your customers and I will pass out your restaurant's business card to all of my customers. Thus, we both win. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine that I go to your restaurant's Facebook page and write various negative comments about your restaurant and how its food is horrible and that I even got food poisoning from the food. As a result, you end up losing customers. All this time, I am hoping that the customers that you've lost will be a good luck charm and end up at my restaurant. Now you eventually hear about all of this, and so you go and write very bad things about my restaurant. We both end up losing the reputations that we have worked so hard for, and we both end up losing in the end. The fourth habit of highly effective people is to think win-win. Don't think that just because your competitor loses, it will mean that you will win. It's not necessary for someone to lose in order for you to win. Try to always let the other side win as well. This way, you will both end up winning over the long haul. Remember, the +1 and -1 is 0. If I wanted to sell you a book that I wrote and I said to you, come on, buy this book for me, can't you see how many months I've spent on it? How I've labored night and day to write it? Would you honestly care? Of course not. You wouldn't care about how much I went through or what I did to write it. Why should you spend money that you probably need for other things just because I went through a lot to write my book? What you will ask yourself is this: what will I gain from reading this book? How will I benefit from it? How will I be able to use that knowledge? The fifth habit is such that I put it into practice every day. I use this method in all of my work and family relationships, and I am even using it when I ask you to share these videos and subscribe to my YouTube channel. The fifth habit of highly effective people is seek first to understand, then to be understood. This also means you should first provide value before you ask for something. Imagine that you need to study for exams and you have found that the best way to do so is to first summarize your topics and then study the summaries in order to be more productive. But let's say that for this class you have 100 topics and case studies to summarize. Now if you try to accomplish this in your way, you will use up most of your time summarizing the topics and you have very little time left to study what you summarized. However, if you talk to 5 of your classmates and decide to split up the work so that each of you will summarize just 20 topics, you'll spend much less time preparing the summaries, and all of you will have more time to study effectively. This unity is called synergy. You could also use this in business. If you have no knowledge or training in designing a website, it would be much easier and faster to hire a professional to do the work instead of taking the years of study that would be necessary to learn the skills yourself. Another way to say this is the popular saying, there's power in unity. Don't forget that since our lifespan is so short, there's only a limited amount that we can learn. However, if we join with those that have different strengths than us, what we can accomplish is unlimited. Thus, the sixth habit of highly effective people is the ability to synergize. The author tells the story of a man who has been trying to cut down a tree for hours. After a while, his neighbor can't stand the noise anymore, comes to him and says, "Don't you realize that if you sharpened your saw, you'd cut down the tree faster?" The man responds, "But I don't have time to spend sharpening the saw." Sure, this story is supposed to be funny, but it demonstrates what most of us do all the time. We can't even find 20 minutes in a day to exercise so that we will be stronger and more productive. As a result, our bodies become so exhausted that we don't even want to pour ourselves a cup of coffee. We can't even find 20 minutes in a day to read a little bit from books that would help us develop ourselves, but we spend all day on Facebook watching television or gossiping. Then, when we go through difficult times, we complain about life and where we found ourselves. Do you know what this resembles? It is as if we want to build a house, but we can't find the time to lay the foundation. And yet, we are trying to find bricks that will stand on their own. Unfortunately, this doesn't work in real life. Thus, the seventh habit of highly effective people is they are always sharpening the saw. If you like this video and you want me to prepare more like it, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Experience X. Also, click on the bell icon so that you get notifications whenever I upload a new video. And if I've helped you or you have found value in this video, please recommend it to your friends so that they can also benefit from it. Finally, don't forget to like this video as YouTube recommends it to more people the more it's liked. Thanks.